And now for our political panel. Carol Lee is the White House correspondent for the Wall Street Journal. Jamelle Bouie is a CBS News political analyst and chief political correspondent at Slate. Ramesh Ponnuru is a visiting fellow at the American Enterprise Institute and a senior editor for the National Review. And we want to welcome Adam Entous to the broadcast. He covers national security and foreign policy for the Washington Post. Ramesh, I want to start with you. We've seen two reactions to this terrorist attack in London. The first was from the Secretary of Defense, James Mattis, and he was asked about the reports, and he said, quote, "I like to learn about something before I talk." And then we've had the president, who has tweeted quite a number of times since the attack, maybe a half a dozen times, and he's talked about everything from promoting his travel ban. He criticized the mayor of London, and he also talked about gun control. What do you make of those two different reactions? Is that the yin and yang of the Trump administration?
Well, I think that the Secretary of Defense has reacted in a fairly customary manner for a high government official, and President Trump continues to redefine what presidential means in this new era. I thought that he found the right tone after Manchester when he called the attackers evil losers. I thought that was a kind of an inspired choice of rhetoric. Here, I think he's reverted more to his normal Twitter form. I think it is off the tone that we would want to have in a president. I think gratuitously getting into an argument with the mayor of London, whose city has just suffered this attack, even if you have political disagreements, trying to win debaters' points on issues like gun control, that's stuff that you can leave to talk radio hosts that you wouldn't normally have the president, the leader of the free world, doing.
Jamelle, the president mentioned that America needs to stop being politically correct. Right. What do you think that means? He means, in part, I guess, the travel ban. Do you think it goes beyond that?
I think it very much is tied to the travel ban, and I think it's broadly a piece of President Trump's view that, quote, radical Islamic terrorism is the chief security threat to the world. It's interesting that the president says that what needs to happen is less political correctness, given that if you look at his administration, we have posts in the State Department unfilled. I don't believe there's an ambassador to the UK at the moment. We have an administration that simply is not fully equipped to deal with security issues. And from my perspective, it seems like that is what we need, less than any particular kind of political incorrectness. But I do think that this choice of words about political correctness ties back to President Trump's sort of broader narrative about Islam, about Islam's danger to the West and to the United States. And I think that's rhetoric that, as I think the mayor of London has criticized President Trump for, it may be disadvantaged to trying to do something about this. But
Carol, what's your sense of this? You have the president, obviously during the campaign, he spoke out, or he made this connection between Islam and terror. When the first travel ban was put forward, a senior administration official talked about the travel ban and what else they might do in the administration. And the senior administration official said, the reality, though, is the situation of large Islamic populations that exist today in France, parts of Germany, Belgium, etc., is not a situation we want to replicate inside the United States. That suggested something more than just banning from certain countries. Do you think the administration is headed in any direction beyond the travel ban in terms of any kinds of new policies that would address a kind of a terror attack we saw in London?
I think there's definitely a potential for that, but I think you need to look at what the president's agenda is, particularly this week, and talking about his difference between his response to the Manchester attack. If you remember, he was overseas at that time. He was talking with world leaders about implementing counterterrorism measures, combating ideology. He was taking a different sort of tone this week. He's mentioning his travel ban. There's possibly a decision within the Supreme Court that could either give him a temporary reprieve on his travel ban or not. And so his agenda, at least this week, he's also home. You know, he tends to tweet a little bit more and say things that are more customary to what we've seen during the campaign from him when he's left to his own devices and he's not traveling overseas or perhaps with a bunch of different aides. And so, you know, potentially, but I think you have to look at just what his narrow agenda is in the next few days, which is particularly on this travel ban.
Yeah, I just, you know, obviously we see him sort of previewing, you know, his view of the courts and pointing the finger at the courts, saying, you know, if something like that were to happen here, they're to blame for that threat. And I think that is something that, you know, obviously would be a concern that, you know, is he I think it's a matter of time. You know, we could see something like that happen here. There are so many soft targets also in the United States. And is he basically going to be pointing the finger at the courts at that point for preventing those attacks from happening here, when in fact, you know, I think we're going to find in the case of London and potentially here that the travel ban, as he's describing it, would not necessarily help with this. And so, you know, that is also a concern. Is he basically trying to project a culpability on the courts for not pursuing his agenda?
Right. This is sort of, it's related to London, and I think it's worth saying here, which is that there's an interesting kind of pattern, I'd call it, with regards to President Trump's reaction to terror attacks or attacks from sort of radicalized people. It seems that if the president can identify them as Muslim or related to Islam, his reactions are immediate and strong. Here in the United States, over the past 2 months, we've had multiple attacks from what authorities have described as white supremacists or people with white supremacist connections, views. There is in Portland, there is in College Park, there is a man who went from Baltimore to New York who authorities have described as a terror attack. And Trump has been silent on those, or at least a prolonged silence. And I think that difference there says a lot about how President Trump conceives of terrorism and how he conceives of the necessary response to it.